They are off. Gukesh with the white pieces. What is he going to open with? He opens with the queen pawn, and Jan-Krzysztof Duda developing the knight and also releasing the dark squared bishop, and now staking that claim in the center. And funnily enough, these two had this exact opening with colors reversed in Dusseldorf earlier this year.
Yeah, this opening is called the Catalan opening, very popular opening at all levels of the game, but most top grandmasters seem to be giving this a go with white. And the one thing that white really has here is this light squared bishop. This light squared bishop is incredibly dangerous on that diagonal, shooting down towards the rook. And white also has more pawns in the center. They're both playing at quick pace, so this is what we call in theory. And what that means is that they've probably seen this position before. They have prepared their battle plans, and they have prepared this position already.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can actually track the advantage of the players by looking at the dashboard background there on the right. And if one color dominates, then it means that that color is winning. And we just saw Jan-Krzysztof Duda there centralize his knight, just block that long diagonal. And Gukesh, he's down to 2.5 minutes, whereas Jan-Krzysztof Duda, he's barely using any time at all. And it does look like white does have this amazing pawn center, but the pieces there on the left side are looking like they're a bit tied up.
Yeah, in the first match, I mean, it was definitely Gukesh who got his openings to a better place than his opponent. But in this game, it's clearly Duda who has done his battle plan more correct here. Because with that last move, he's ready even to get his light square bishop into the game. And Gukesh has to be a bit careful here. Remember to keep an eye on the heart rates on the right-hand side, and also on the evaluation bar. If it moves up in white or black's favor, they're going to be doing very well. I mean, white has this nice center, 2 pawns in the center, really good thing to have, but black has nice activity. And look at that time advantage, Ivanka, a massive time advantage.
It's scary stuff. And also just look at the heart rates. Gukesh has gone up to 98, and he puts his queen, right, allowing one of the knights to trade itself for the bishop. And this was the move that I was expecting Jan-Krzysztof to play, just to attack the queen. And now how is he going to continue? Because he has to connect the 2 rooks together, and he has to have a plan of improvement.
So black has some good pieces here. That black knight cannot be kicked away, and he's trying now to get ready to break, moving the rook in. But I like white's center. I'm a real believer in controlling the middle of the battlefield, because you can dart out to any side of the battlefield then, and white, Gukesh, is in control of that area. But he's going to have to pick the pace up, and he does. He plays a strong, aggressive move in the center, and Jan-Krzysztof playing automatically here, Ivanka.
Yeah, it looks like Jan-Krzysztof has seen this all before, and Gukesh recapturing that pawn with the knight. So there's a big threat on the board of the knight jumping to the f6 square to give a check to the king. So Jan-Krzysztof either has to just slide away with his queen, or the move that I'm probably expecting is actually to make a trade with the knights.
Yeah, there is some positional problems here for black. Chess can basically be decided upon 2 factors: tactics, so if someone loses their queen or gets checkmated, that's called a tactical exchange. But also, to get to that position, you have to play positional chess and get the advantage with your pieces, with your pawns. And I can see this position, to my eyes, Ivanka, looks positionally quite a lot better for white after pawn takes, because the white knight, he took with a rook. Very surprised at that one, but he does get the open file with his rook there, and now he moves his bishop in to attack black's rook. There was also another way to play. I thought white was going to try to get his knight into a great square.
Yeah, and there we did see Jan-Krzysztof Duda just moving his rook away, but this allows white to win a pawn. And again, white has a really nice threat of the bishop, just tucked away out of sight, just moving all the way up the board to trap the black queen. And that's why Jan-Krzysztof says, nope, not happening on his watch, and he trades rooks.
Yeah, white has won a pawn, but black has the advantage of the 2 bishops. You could also see maybe the white king getting a little bit weak later on, but I am preferring white here with that extra pawn. I mean, He's thinking about the correct way to capture. The evaluation bar, though, is funnily enough saying, well, actually, black is doing okay here. And that surprises me a bit because you're a pawn down. You don't have a lot of activity with the black pieces. So why is black doing okay here?
I think it's all to do with the dark squares. That dark square bishop is just simply uncontested. It can just plonk itself onto the c5 square and, well, Gukesh will be having problems with his king for a long time. And there we see Jan-Krzysztof Duda make that move.
And Gukesh is so calm. He was saying earlier on in that interview that he tries to stay calm, but he's got to play with a little bit more urgency now. He brings his bishop back, and the evaluation bar does not like this move. It says that Jan-Krzysztof is doing very well now, but these are two of the calmest players you're ever going to see. At least it looks that way. And White would love to exchange lots of pieces off because then his extra pawn would be a very powerful unit. But maybe it's the White Rook which is a bit of a problem here. The White Rook could be trapped in some lines because the black bishop stops the White Rook from retreating. And Jan-Krzysztof saying, no, you're not going to swap pieces off. I'm going to move my bishop back and put it on another diagonal.
And Gukesh, just 20 seconds left on the clock. And Simon saying there's so much possibility here for black. The White Rook could get trapped. Well, that's why Gukesh moves it. But it is in the eye line of the bishop. I mean, also, I would be worried about the bishop that is inactive on its starting square, just swooping into the position to have an eye on the knight.
But 15 seconds for Gukesh. He has the extra pawn, but can he use that extra pawn? It's well blockaded at the moment. Jan-Krzysztof is thinking about the right way to play this. Maybe Jan-Krzysztof can now activate his queen. I'd be very tempted. Move the queen into the center of the board. The center of the board is a great square for the queen. Maybe he can activate his bishop. He's going for a safer move, though, and this is a very slow approach. And Gukesh now using a strategy called the pin. He's pinning that bishop to the queen.
And there goes the queen in the middle of the board. And we just saw the evaluation bar say, hey ho, big mistake there. But it seems an opportunity was missed. And Gukesh attacking the queen. Queen steps backwards and wow. The evaluation bar just doesn't know where it favors.
Well, the evaluation bar is saying black is a great move here. I think bishop g4 could be an option, but this was also on the radar because that rook, he has to sacrifice the rook, Gukesh. So black is doing really well now, but they're both down to hardly any time on the clock.
Totally, and Gukesh giving a check. King moves towards the center, and Gukesh attacking that rook. I mean, Gukesh, you can't write him off just yet because he does have a big pawn in the middle of the board.
But black must be the favorite here with the rook extra. And black also has control of the open line. And look at that. He moved with only seconds on the clock, milliseconds on the clock there. And we see resignation. If he doesn't win, he will lose this match. He's not out of the competition, but he will drop down to the lower bracket. And Jan-Krzysztof playing the queen's pawn. And now the knight coming out. We have the queen's gambit on the board.
Yeah, and this is a critical moment for Gukesh. How is he going to keep the game alive? And he chooses an opening. It's a very sharp opening called the Ragozin. And these two also have played this particular variation against each other before. So what is Duda going to play? Well, he just develops his bishop and just ignores the pin against the king.
Yeah, you can see both of the bishops doing pinning. Pinning means they're tying down, pinning down one of their opponent's pieces. White can't move the knight by the bishop because he'd be moving into check, and black can't move his knight by white's bishop because he'd lose his queen. So this is a pinning strategy, very good strategy that the top players often use when they're trying to get their pieces into the battle here. Now, Jan-Krzysztof is just trying to recall his data bank there in his mind, and he's trying to pick a variation where he won't have too many risks. So he captures in the center and plays a solid developing move, just moving his queen one square out there. And this has all been seen, this position. I've even had this position with the white pieces myself.
Me too. And black has a choice. Black can kick the bishop, and there you see it happening. And now he can actually strike out in the center if he's feeling very ambitious. And actually, he needs to be ambitious. So, of course, Gukesh, he's not going to shy away from the fight. He immediately challenges that pawn in the middle of the board.
Yes, and now white has a decision to make. Normally white's pawn in front of the king moves because the only piece that white hasn't got in the game is his bishop. Now this is another way you can play. This is still what we call theory, established opening ideas. This is where you have to do your homework in chess. If you want to get better, you've got to do your work. Unfortunately, none of us like it, but it's got to be done. And we're still following theory. The queen comes out, and now black has increased pressure on that pin. The white knight is under a lot of pressure there on the left-hand side. Remember, the white knight can't move because white would be moving into check, which you're not allowed to do in chess. So it's about time white gets his pieces in the game here and tries to get castle. So if I was white, I'd be moving that pawn in front of my king. I have to say, Jan-Krzysztof doesn't look very comfortable here, Jovanka.
No, he doesn't look very comfortable, and instead he centralizes the knight to an active square, getting ready to kick that queen back. But of course, Gukesh, he is an aggressive player. He jumps in with the knight, and there is huge problems there with that knight on c3. And Duda attacking the queen, queen stepping forward, but still the problems persist. Now knight takes pawn is going to be in the air. There's also knight takes knight. So many possibilities for black.
I think black's done very well from this opening, and also on the clock as well, because white, Duda, clearly is not comfortable, has not prepared this position very well because he's only got a minute left, and there's a lot of ways that black can win a pawn here, as Jovanka mentioned, and white's king is going to take a couple of moves to castle. Look at that frown on his face. He's not happy, is the dude at the moment.
He's not happy, and his clock is ticking down. You know, it's 50 seconds on the clock. His heart rate is elevated, getting close to the danger zone, and there it takes a leap up, and he's thinking, what can he do? Because there is a lot of uncomfortable pressure against the white knight on c3. He has to make a decision. He's got to move.
He spent a minute on this position. That is absolutely crazy in Armageddon. You can't spend a minute. Now he does kick the bishop away, and that bishop can now just capture the knight with check. That would gain more time, and he does. He takes the knight, gives a check. 3 points to 3 points though, because white takes back. And this is Duda's idea, to try and get his knight in the center of the board. But we see the evaluation bar not liking this, because now black wins another pawn.
Exactly, and this is the dream opening for Gukesh, because not only is he material up, he's also got a massive lead on the clock as well. Well, there is one thing in Duda's favor, is once he can get developed, once the light square bishop enters the fray, it's not going to be that easy for Gukesh.
It's true, but it is an extra pawn, and Gukesh is not going to get a better chance than this to take it to Armageddon. Look at the evaluation bar. Both players also got their heart rates up. They're both in the red there. And Duda, well, he's used to playing very quick chess, but he's going to have to here. He moves his rook to attack the black knight, and the black knight has to retreat. Otherwise, that knight would have been lost. And we're going to see the middle part of the game progressing now. White needs to get his pieces in the game. So he's now preparing his king or bishop to go to that square. His king comes into the center.
Yeah, his king comes in just to protect that rook. But still, there is some troubles there for white, because not only are your material down, but the knight in the middle is also tied down. And it's not really very easy to find a good role for the bishop there on the edge of the board. And now it's Gukesh. He is thinking, what should he do with the king? Should he castle the king? Should he perhaps get a bit more ambitious and start throwing pawns on that side forward? Well, Gukesh is thinking.
Yeah, he's thinking, will he castle Gukesh or will he not castle? Now, normally you want to do this move where you move your king and rook, but sometimes when the queens are off, it's better to keep your king in the middle of the board. Not recommended at the start, though. Things can go horribly wrong if you do that. But he's advancing. He's using that extra pawn. He's trying to, get a lovely square for a knight. Very clever plan there from Gukesh. That pawn he moved is going to give a foothold for the black knight to jump into with a check. It looks like a safe extra pawn, but can white win a pawn now?
No,
I don't think so.
No, you couldn't, because that pawn was poisoned. There was a nasty check with the knight on b3 happening, and Gukesh just simply reinforcing that stronghold, and now the knight jumps in with a beautiful check, and look at that pawn structure. Look at that chain of pawns that is headed Duda's way, and Duda 2 seconds on the clock. Wow, and now Gukesh gets the king to safety.
I think Duda's only chance in this position is the bishops. They are on opposite colour squares. That means they dance around each other, and there could be, if you get to an ending just with those bishops left, it could then be a draw, but he's got a lot of other pieces to get rid of first. The knight, the 2 rooks. Duda trying to make some action on the king side, but there's not really too much going over there. Can Gukesh get those pawns on the left-hand side going down the board? Remember, you get a pawn to the other end of the board, you can get your queen back, and of course that would be a winning idea quite often.
Yeah, and Gukesh taking some time out just to make sure that there's no hidden threats against his bishop. It is loose. Otherwise, he'll be thinking about maybe maneuvering his knight out of the way, just start advancing the pawns, and instead he just moves his rook and gets ready to support the advance. But wow, Duda coming in with the bishop.
Yeah, Duda's such a hard fighter here, and he's getting a bit of coordination with his pieces, but Gukesh is now moving his pawns. They're starting to get nearer and nearer the touchdown square. Can he move another one? First of all, he kicks the bishop. The bishop was attacked. It has to retreat, and here they come. They're like space invaders, just boo 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 boo, and they're getting all the way down the board. Look at them go. They look too strong to me.
They are too strong, and Duda with just 6 seconds on the clock. This position is going to be almost impossible to defend. But Gukesh only 13 seconds as well, and Duda fighting hard to establish a blockade. And of course, Gukesh says, "Nope, you can't have that." And desperate times, desperate measures, and Duda has given up a piece.
But the clock situation is very intense for both players here. And hang on a minute, things change a little bit here, because white has won the piece back here. That gives Duda a glimmer of hope. He's no longer a piece down. He's still got this horrible pawn to deal with, but I feel he's got some chances.
1, and yes, definitely is an improvement from 2 passed pawns coming your way, but that 1 passed pawn is 2 squares away from queening. It will be making its way to its destination, and well, Duda setting all the tricks, but there goes 1 pawn, and 4 seconds on the clock.
And you can see the white king is in a bit of trouble there, but there's no killer blow as yet. That could be the killer blow. We're going to get an ending where black is going to queen the pawn. You can see the queen come on there, and we have now a bishop versus a rook. The rook in the ending, much more powerful than the bishop. It should be winning for black here, but it requires a little bit of work, because you still need to get one of your pawns to the other end of the board, and they're a long way to go with those pawns yet.
Yeah, and it requires the black king and the rook to coordinate on the light squares. And Gukesh rushing with that pawn advance. Perhaps that wasn't necessary, but okay, now the king is coming in, and the bishop moves backwards just to attack the pawn.
Yeah, the black king is starting to come in, and the way you try to win this is you try to force the white king to a very bad square, and obviously you want to win one of your opponent's pawns. So Gukesh moving his king into a position where he's aiming for that pawn on the right hand side, but at the moment white's bishop is guarding that pawn, but he's going to get ready to soon go rook takes pawn, I think.
Yeah, I was actually waiting for Gukesh to do it on the move, but instead he drives the king 1 square forward and then just circles that king. He's getting ready to give a check. There it comes.
Very nice technique here from Gukesh, because look at the black king. It's run all the way into the position, but they're blitzing out the moves here. Their time situation is critical, but I can see another queen appearing on the board, and Duda cannot stop that pawn. His only chance is to try and use this pawn and queen.
Yeah, well, Duda making things tricky, and now here it comes. The race is in progress. Now, can Duda miraculously pull off a draw with just the pawns? Nope, absolutely not. Jan-Krzysztof Duda will be playing with black, gets 4 minutes, and Jan-Krzysztof will be having draw odds. And there is no time bonus, no increment per move. What you see on the clock is what you get.
And this opening has actually got a very funny name. It's called the Fort Knox Defense. Based on the establishment over in America where you can't break in, break out. Black setup is supposed to be like that Fort Knox, unpregnable. You can't get through it, but this was also a little bit better for white, but Jan-Krzysztof is just saying, you will not enter, not into my Fort Knox, young man. And the knight goes in, so he's trying to make complications straight away, and you've got to take that knight with the pawn. As Jovanka said, the time in this, white gets a bit more time, but white must win. If it's a draw, Jan-Krzysztof goes through to the next round, and they don't get any added time. Most of the Armageddon games, Jovanka, have really been decided on the clock, I feel.
They absolutely have. It's an important thing to consider. And there we see Gukesh just moving his queen to the center, just protecting that white pawn in the middle of the board. And he's going to get ready to line up that rook on an open line and then develop the dark squared bishop. And, well, Duda just taking some time out to castle, and sure enough, the rook finds itself on an open line.
A bit of an uncomfortable position for Jan-Krzysztof, I feel. He tries with his last move to make some exchanges, but this is very risky because white can now introduce a pawn into the attack. The problem with black's position is it's very cramped. That white pawn in the center of the board is gaining a lot of space for white. White's bishop looks very nice in the middle of the board as well, and white's pieces in general just need to be more active here.
You almost feel that white could be really bold and go bishop takes pawn, but okay, that wasn't tactically working, but it was close. And now Gukesh pushing back that black bishop and developing his own piece. And you're right there, Simon, there's just no way for black to untangle.
Yes, and this is a problem with black. Black's queen is also in a very bad square lined up against the rook. So look at the queen. It has to go to a passive square. And can white now increase the pressure? He just uses the open line. The open line is in the middle of the board. What pieces are best on the open line? The rooks. So he's going to try to get his rooks there, but he's got some other options here. He can now try to exchange off bishops, white can, and I think I would go for that move. Play the bishop to a square where it tries to exchange itself off for black's bishop, because then you get access with your knight to the king side. But okay, he's not doing that. He's bringing his rook over.
He's bringing his rook over and does feel that white is making a very dangerous attack there on the king side.
He plays it now. The bishop's come off.
Yeah, and the rook is going to swing over the queen. The black queen is far away from the defense. This is looking really dangerous for Jan-Krzysztof Duda. Almost, I would say, unsurvivable.
Yeah, and you can see the white knight is now getting ready to come in there, and this is really dangerous. The black king just has a lot of holes around it. You have this pawn which has made some weaknesses in front of the black king, and white now with the last move is going to try and get rid of black's knight, because this is the only good piece that black has. Why not grab a pawn? In a bad position, you might as well grab a pawn. So Jan-Krzysztof has now gone one pawn up, and I think that was a wise decision there.
I agree with that decision, but I don't think it was necessarily that wise, because the black king is going to suffer some consequences. And here comes step one. The queen is getting ready to shift herself on the dark squares and then start attacking the king. And once a knight and a queen start sniffing around the king, it is going to be all sorts of trouble.
Oh, this looks really dangerous for black. You might even be able to push
the pawn.
Yeah, we love pushing the pawn. He's thinking about it. I think Gukesh is thinking about, oh no, he plays a calmer move first. This is also a great move because he wants to move the pawn next to the rook 2 squares, and he does. This is his whole point, to get rid of the black knight, and now the white knight can come in, but this has changed. The evaluation bar actually saying, well, black might be able to defend this.
Well, there were some kind of downsides to this whole operation. The knight now can jump to the f5 square, and the queen is now within touching distance of her king. Is it now time to initiate trades? Yes. Jan-Krzysztof Duda does that. Wow.
Brave play from Jan-Krzysztof. He grabbed that pawn, and he's now trying to exchange some pieces off the board, and he does have that extra pawn. That was really wise to take that one, and if white can't break through, this is looking good for Jan-Krzysztof. The evaluation bar for the first time really in black's favor now.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, black's king is still pretty shaky, but take a look at white's king. White's king is not that safe either. So this might be the downside to Gukesh's play, because he can't necessarily involve all his pieces in the attack if he has to keep an eye on his own king.
Yeah, and you can see now that black can at some point even try to grab another pawn if possible here. But they've got to play quicker here. 1 minute 40 versus 1 minute 55. And Gukesh now aiming to get an attack in, but Jan-Krzysztof comes in with a very scary idea. There's an idea of checkmate here. The black queen is threatening to move into the corner, giving checkmate. Can white defend this?
Well, you're gonna have to offer trade up of queens. That's the only move that I can see. You can take the pawn with check and then just retreat the queens and say, let's go into an endgame.
But then it's a draw because the knight can just go backwards and forwards, and a draw is all that Jan-Krzysztof needs here. I think it's a draw. Is that right? If I calculate that correctly? Let's just remind everyone, if black doesn't need to win this game. Black only needs a draw to progress. And I can't see any way that Gukesh can keep this game going.
Yeah, you're right there, Simon. The black knight is just simply going to go backwards and forwards. And remember, Gukesh is in a must-win situation. And there we saw Duda looking to the side.
And he gives up.